Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 10 Part 65 based on novel. So let's start. The tens of thousands of large mountains were so vast that they even exceeded Lindong's expectations. Moreover, even with Chen Gui, someone who was familiar with the terrain, leading the way, it was still 2 days later before they finally left this area. Standing outside the area where tens of thousands of large mountains stood, Lindong glanced at the many untouched mountain ranges that seemingly cut across the sky. Then, he involuntarily sighed softly, before he circulated his mental energy and left a spatial stamp at this area. By doing so, if he wants to come back here in the future, he could use the spatial stamp that he left behind to directly tear the empty space and reach here. It would be much more efficient than before. Brother Lindong, we have only reached the edge of the northern Xian region. The headquarters of Darkness Palace is located in Darkness City, which is in the middle of the northern Xian region. Therefore, we will need a couple of days in order to reach that city. I wonder if we will be in time for the worship ceremony. Chen Gui looked into the distance before he spoke in a worried voice. 1 day is enough. Lindong smiled faintly. Unlike the mountain range, the northern Xian region was not covered by extremely frightening dense yuan power fog. Therefore, he was naturally to unleash his full speed, and it was likely possible for them to reach Darkness City within a day. In that case, let's hurry. The palace master is gradually being isolated by the elders. Meanwhile, those who are loyal to her are either being quietly eliminated or are prevented from returning to Darkness City through various means. Clearly, they are planning to make a move and force her to give up her position during the worship ceremony. Chen Gui sighed. Lindong nodded. He mused for a moment before he said, Brother Chen Gui, those two old monsters who have stepped into the reincarnation stage, are they the strongest ones in Darkness Palace? It was likely that their journey to the Darkness City was not going to be a peaceful one. In that case, given Lindong's character, he naturally wanted to find out about his opponent's strength in order to prevent any mishaps from occurring. According to what I know, those two lords are indeed the most senior individuals within our Darkness Palace. However, you should also know that our Darkness Palace has a very deep foundation and it has existed for thousands of years. Therefore, even I am not certain as to whether there are any more fossil-like old monsters hidden deeper within. Chen Gui pondered for a moment before shaking his head. It was likely that even those elders from Darkness Palace were unsure about this. Therefore, even much less needs to be said about him. Darkness Palace is no ordinary sect. Standing beside him, Ling Qingzhu suddenly said softly, Our Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace also has a long history. Hence, I obtained some information regarding Darkness Palace from some ancient texts. The founder of Darkness Palace should be the second owner of the Darkness Ancestral Symbol. Moreover, the Darkness Ancestral Symbol is different from the other ancestral symbols. The other ancestral symbols were scattered all across the world as their various masters fell into a slumber. Subsequently, they were obtained by other experts. However, it is different for the Darkness Ancestral Symbol. Ever since the Darkness Ancestral Symbol fell into the hands of the second generation and he founded Darkness Palace, the Darkness Ancestral Symbol has always remained within Darkness Palace. It is an heirloom that has been passed down even until today. Oh! A tinge of shock flashed across Lindong's eyes. He had the most in-depth understanding of the ancestral symbols. Once such a divine object appeared, it will definitely attract many experts, and it was no simple task to keep an ancestral symbol. One example would be the Lightning Emperor. As he possessed the Thunderbolt ancestral symbol, he was ultimately targeted by the Yimo, resulting in the destruction of his lightning cave. If not because he had powerful techniques and was able to seal that Yimo king, and create a thunder world to hide the Thunderbolt ancestral symbol, it was likely that the Thunderbolt ancestral symbol would have been scattered and obtained by someone else. As such, it was a difficult task for Darkness Palace to continue passing down the Darkness ancestral symbol from one generation to the next. This also indicated how powerful Darkness Palace must be. Otherwise, it would be almost impossible to do this. Let me see. From the second generation, the Darkness Ancestral Symbol has been passed down 5 times, and Qingtan should be the 6th owner of the Darkness Ancestral Symbol. Ling Qingzhu glanced at Lindong and said, since Darkness Palace was able to keep the Darkness ancestral symbol for so many years, they definitely possess some secret techniques. However, it seems like Qingtan has not mastered such techniques. Otherwise, there is no way those elders would dare to force her to give up her position. Therefore, we must not let down our guard this time around. Lindong focused his eyes, before he nodded. It seems like he had underestimated Darkness Palace previously. After all, the northern Xian region was nearly as vast as the eastern Xian region. Yet, Darkness Palace was undoubtedly the overlord of this entire region, and there was no other faction that could threaten their dominance. This was completely different from the eastern Xian region, in which there were many factions standing at the top. In fact, from another point of view, this reflected the strength of Darkness Palace. Nevertheless, I would like to witness the strength of the northern Xian region's overlord. Lindong smiled. Although Darkness Palace was no ordinary faction, he did not fear it at all. After all, with his current strength, he was definitely an elite of this world. As a samsara stage expert who had touched reincarnation, as well as a supreme symbol master which was comparable to a reincarnation stage expert, an ordinary reincarnation stage expert stood no chance against him. In fact, only those reincarnation stage experts who had experienced one reincarnation tribulation could match up to him. Furthermore, it was extremely difficult to find an expert at this level in this world. If there was, he was most likely an extremely old fossil-like existence who had lived since the ancient times, like Qingxi. Chen Gui secretly sighed in relief when he saw Lindong's calm expression. As of now, there was no way he could tell what Lindong's strength was. However, from the way he managed to easily kill two elders from Darkness Palace, Chen Gui knew that Lindong had definitely reached quite a terrifying level. As such, perhaps Lindong is the only one who could help Qingtan now. Let's go. Lindong waved his hand and ceased speaking. Immediately, a thought passed through his mind, before mighty mental energy subsequently lifted everyone up. After which, the space around them gradually became distorted. In the next moment, everyone vanished simultaneously and they were already 50 kilometers away the next time they appeared. Unlike the eastern Xian region, the northern Xian region did not possess many different empires. Most of the land in this region was managed by the branch palaces that was established by Darkness Palace. A branch palace was equivalent to the king of an empire, and there was an extremely complicated bureaucracy beneath it. From this point of view, the management of the northern Xian region by Darkness Palace was better than the way the eastern Xian region was managed. It's no wonder Darkness Palace could continue to remain as the overlord of the northern Xian region. Although there was a huge distance between the tens of thousands of large mountains and Darkness City, the traveling time was greatly reduced as Lindong was able to tear the empty space apart. Therefore, by next day morning, they had already arrived at the outskirts of Darkness City. Standing on top of a mountain, Lindong looked into the distance. Then, he saw a massive city which stretched on endlessly, located in the area in front of where the mountain and the river crossed each other. It appeared like a half-exposed body of a large ancient beast, which was hidden underground and quietly laying low. The entire city was black in color, and it gave off a solemn and heavy feeling. Meanwhile, in the sky above the city, a humongous darkness light barrier enveloped around the entire city. On the light barrier were countless rotating symbols. Meanwhile, mighty ripples, which could not be described with words, spread and caused the empty space to show signs of distortion. Looking from Lindong's angle, it was possible to see over a dozen incomparably large city gates. At this moment, large lines of people were queuing outside the city gates, before they slowly streamed into the city. The size of the crowd was extremely startling. This city was undoubtedly the largest one that Lindong had ever seen. Given its size, it was likely that this city could easily accommodate tens of millions of people. Hence, the Darkness City was indeed worthy of being the headquarters of Darkness Palace. It was extremely grand, and it was no wonder that an intense fight had broke out within Darkness Palace, over the position of Palace Master. After all, the Palace Master of Darkness Palace was basically the overlord of the entire northern Xian region. With a flip of his palm, he would be able to control the lives of countless of people. The worship ceremony is a grand event held by our Darkness Palace once every 3 years. Regardless of their size, every faction in the northern Xian region must come and pay tribute. If someone does not come, the members of Darkness Judgment Hall will be knocking on their doors the very next day to punish them. Chen Gui looked at the vast crowd outside the city before he said, "That Darkness Judgment Hall doesn't sound like a decent place." Lindong frowned upon hearing this. Meanwhile, fury involuntarily rose in his heart. After all, there were so many places that lass could go, yet she chose to go to such a bloody and dirty place. When he realized that Lindong was outraged, Chen Gui could only smile bitterly. Since the latter killed hundreds of elite Yuan Gate disciples back at the unique Devil City, his tactics were also quite bloody. Yet, he became extremely furious when he heard that Qingtan was doing the same. "Brother Lindong, due to the worship ceremony, the security of Darkness City will be at its tightest. Moreover, the palace master has been restrained and those elders should have control over the entire city. It is likely that we will be discovered if we enter from the city gates. Since we cannot enter from the city gates, we will just directly rip the city guarding formation and enter." Lindong said nonchalantly. "That formation was set up by the first palace master of our Darkness Palace. If you forcefully tear it apart, it is likely that you will immediately alert the powerful individuals in the city," Chen Gui said helplessly. "Although that formation is powerful, it is a difficult task to stop me." Lindong smiled and said, "Brother Chen Gui, both you and Mu Shou should follow me into the city. Everyone else should remain outside." Chen Gui nodded. After all, they were of little help even if they entered the city. In fact, they may even end up becoming a hindrance instead. Lindong waved his sleeve. Then, a faint silver light scattered from his hand before it wrapped around the four of them. Soon after, the space around him slowly became distorted, before the four of them disappeared out of the blue. Chen Gui felt his head become giddy. However, by the time he recovered, loud noises promptly swarmed him. He opened his eyes and saw that the four of them were already in the sky above the Darkness City. Behind them was the black light barrier, which was still enveloping the city. However, it did not react to their entry. Incredible. Chen Gui sighed. As a member of Darkness Palace, he naturally knew just how powerful that formation was. Yet, Lindong could enter as he pleased. His abilities were truly terrifying. Lindong smiled. Although he had yet to refine the spatial ancestral symbol, it was still possible for him to use some of its strength. Therefore, it was not difficult to get past this formation. Chen Gui looked into the distance and he turned his attention towards the middle of Darkness City. Suddenly, countless black lights suddenly rose towards the sky and they looked just like grand fireworks. His expression gradually turned grave when he saw the black lights. The ceremony has begun. In the middle of the massive Darkness City was a square made up of black rocks where countless black stone pillars were erected. Moreover, these black stone pillars were all covered with the names of the people who have made great contributions to Darkness Palace. At the same time, they were also former top experts within Darkness Palace. This square was called Darkness Square and it was an important place in Darkness City. In fact, this place was only opened each time after the worship ceremony begins. Moreover, those who were allowed to come to this place were all individuals with some standing in the northern Xian region. Of course, their standing and authority were bestowed upon them by Darkness Palace. Currently, Darkness Square was filled with a black sea of people that stretched on endlessly. Even with such a frightening number of people gathered here, this place was eerily silent. In fact, no one dared to make the slightest noise. Meanwhile, countless pairs of eyes were filled with fear as they looked at the middle of the square. At that spot was a black altar and a 10,000-step stone stairs as well. At the top of the stone stairs was a black throne. Anyone seated there would be able to overlook the entire Darkness Square, and anyone who occupied that seat would seemingly become the overlord of the entire northern Xian region. Currently, there was a lovely figure seated on the throne above the altar. She was wearing black robes with mysterious golden symbols covering the edges of her robes. Meanwhile, one could vaguely feel a noble and elegant aura being emitted from her. She had a peaceful and pretty face, along with snow-white skin. Her eyebrows were crescent-shaped and she had a sharp nose. Her serene deep pair of eyes appeared like the deepest night sky. Under her calm and peaceful exterior were endless mysteries, and it caused one to become involuntarily intoxicated by her. Although she looked colder and more mature compared to before, it was still possible to see the outline of that lovely young girl from before. Therefore, who else could she be other than Qingtan? As of now, Qingtan no longer had the same youthful ignorance as before. As her eyes moved, they looked as sharp as blades. Moreover, there was also a faint bloodlust flowing beneath them, causing one's heart to shudder. She sat on the throne as she surveyed the sea of people standing on Darkness Square. Everywhere she looked, all she could see were humble and subservient figures. In fact, hardly anyone dared to look directly at her. The lively and tender young lady from before had now become the genuine overlord of the northern Xian region. Her every decision could easily dictate the lives of tens of thousands of people, and she had absolute authority. Seated on the throne, she used her cold and stern eyes to survey the entire place before she finally nodded. "Let the worship ceremony begin." Many loud and clear voices, which were wrapped with Yuan power, spread into the distance and resounded across the place right after she nodded. Immediately, countless black rays of light shot towards the sky, and it looked like a grand banquet was about to begin. Standing in the Darkness Square, the leaders of various factions in the northern Xian region began to show up one after another. After which, their respectful voices spread across this place like waves. "The chief of the Northern Mang sect has came over with my members to pay respect. Congratulations on the ceremony. Palace Master is almighty and we all pledge our allegiance to you. The Great Snow Mountain Chief wishes that the Palace Master's impressive and dignified manner will last forever, and that you will always be unbeatable." The worship ceremony was a grand event that affected the entire northern Xian region. In fact, the leaders of 80% of the factions in the northern Xian region would personally show up. After which, they would greet the Palace Master as though they were her subordinates. Moreover, no one dared to miss this event. As such, the experts gathered on this square likely made up 60% of the northern Xian region's fighting strength, and the scale of this event was truly terrifying. Many respectful cries reverberated across the square. However, that noble figure seated above the altar did not reveal even the slightest emotion in her eyes. Instead, she merely looked around before she focused her attention on the front of Darkness Square. At that area, there were many figures quietly seated there. Most of them were elderly individuals with white hair, and the robes that they wore indicated that they had an extraordinary status within Darkness Palace. At this moment, during such a grand occasion, their eyes were all gently shut. Meanwhile, none of them cast a respectful look to the figure above the altar. In fact, some of them even curled their lips. Clearly, they did not approve of her. There were two extremely old figures, who looked like they were about to die, in front of this group. Both of them had a head full of white hair, and their faces were filled with deep gullies. Currently, their heads were gently lowered and it looked like they were asleep. Seated on the throne, when Qingtan's eyes swept across these two figures, her cold pupils hardened slightly. After which, she slowly clenched the small hand under her sleeve, before an icy-cold murderous intent flashed across her eyes. The complicated worship ceremony continued and respectful voices resounded across the entire place. However, everyone could feel that the worship ceremony this time around seemed to be a little different from before. The leaders of the various factions were secretly observing Darkness Square. After which, their eyes paused on the group of elders right at the front. Then, they rotated their eyes and looked around the altar. At that area were countless black-clothed figures, and there was a rich bloody smell being emitted from their bodies. Meanwhile, there was also a ferocious ghost face with a black longsword pierced deep into its head, on their black clothes. Hence, they looked extremely terrifying. Every faction in the northern Xian region knew about these troops, and they were all extremely fearful of them. This was because they represented the bloodiest and most powerful department in Darkness Palace, Darkness Judgment Hall. Currently, this group of powerful individuals from Darkness Judgment Hall had formed a tight defense around the altar. Meanwhile, the direction that they were facing was coincidentally the area where the elders were located. Clearly, it seemed as if they were guarding against something. The entire Darkness Square was covered by a strange atmosphere. Some leaders secretly turned to face one another. It was likely that they had heard some rumors as well. In fact, they knew that the worship ceremony this time around would likely be exceptionally chaotic. However, this had little impact on them. After all, it didn't matter whether Darkness Palace was in the hands of the current Palace Master or the Elder Council. That was because they were not qualified to oppose the massive Darkness Palace. Hence, all they had to do this time around was to stand by obediently and watch the show. The respectful praises gradually came to a halt a long while later. Following which, the surrounding atmosphere suddenly stiffened after the din died down. Above the altar, two black-robed elders were standing on the two sides of the throne. When they saw this scene, they turned their attention towards Qingtan, who was currently seated on the throne. After which, they gently swung their hands. "Welcome the ancestral tablet." Qingtan slowly stood up from the throne, before she moved her legs. Then, she clenched her fist, before she gently stomped on the ground. A buzzing sound erupted from the countless black stone pillars standing in the square. After which, many black lights shot forth before they crisscrossed in the sky above the square. Then, they transformed into a huge black stone tablet. Meanwhile, the names of the previous palace masters were all carved on that tablet. The countless individuals standing in the square knelt down immediately after the stone tablet appeared. In fact, even those elders in the Elder Council bowed slightly. The only exception were the two elders standing at the front, who merely lowered their heads. Above the altar, Qingtan bowed slightly towards the stone tablet. After which, the stone tablet trembled. Then, a dark flight of stairs stretched forward and finally connected to the altar. "Palace Master, please worship the ancestors." The two black-robed elders beside the throne cried out in unison, while wild excitement rose within their eyes. Once this worship ceremony was complete, Qingtan's position as the Palace Master will be cemented and no one will be able to oppose her. The two elders standing at the front of the Elder Council finally opened their shut eyes. After which, they gently extended their hands, which were hidden within their sleeves previously. When he saw this scene, a cold glint flashed across the eyes of the elder, who was seated right behind them. Then, he nodded gently before he stood up and cried, "Hold on." His cry immediately caused the atmosphere of the entire square to turn tense. Promptly, the hearts of countless individuals started to pound wildly. Was it about to begin? "First Elder, why are you stopping the Palace Master from paying worship?" The two black-robed elders' expressions sunk when they saw this. After which, they cried out in a stern voice. The old man, who was being addressed as First Elder, glanced at the both of them with a dark and cold expression. After which, his eyes paused on Qingtan, before he said in an indifferent voice, "According to our palace's rules, only a palace master that is supported unanimously by the Elder Council is qualified to worship our ancestor. However, I believe that the new palace master has not fulfilled this criteria." The two black-robed elders' expressions changed as they turned to look at Qingtan. Qingtan used her icy cold eyes to stare at the First Elder. After which, a chilly voice sounded, "First Elder, Master has personally passed the position of Palace Master to me before his death. According to the rules, his order surpasses that of the Elder Councils. You claim that the previous Palace Master passed his position over to you just before he died. However, this is merely an one-sided account from you. Based on the information that I obtained, you launched a sneak attack on the previous Palace Master while he was attempting to break through to the reincarnation stage, causing him to fail as a result. Moreover, you snatched the Darkness ancestral symbol and attempted to seize control of our Darkness Palace." The First Elder chuckled and said, "Girl, you may be young but you are truly ruthless. In fact, you even dare to kill your own teacher. If the position of Palace Master really falls into your hands, I'm afraid that the ancestors of our Darkness Palace will be unable to rest in peace. First Elder, how dare you act disrespectfully towards the Palace Master? If she did not receive it personally from the Palace Master, do you really think that it is so easy to obtain the Darkness ancestral symbol? In fact, do you think that it is possible to snatch the inheritance of the Palace Master?" A black-robed elder cried out sternly. "Humph, everyone in this world knows that one can only obtain someone else's inheritance only if he obliges. You are attempting to slander the Palace Master and this is a serious offense," the other black-robed elder said in a deep voice. The previous palace master trusted that lass very much. Who knows if she used some dirty tricks to obtain the darkness ancestral symbol and his inheritance. The first elder waved his hand. Soon after, he rotated his eyes and said, "Moreover, you should be aware that one must have the 2 sacred items of our darkness palace in order to become the palace master." Qingtan's eyes were icy cold. Promptly, an ancient symbol slowly surfaced between her brows. After that symbol appeared, the entire place gradually darkened, before an indescribable ancient fluctuation spread. It was the fluctuation from the darkness ancestral symbol. When the first elder felt that fluctuation, a greedy glint flashed across his eyes. Soon after, he chuckled, "The darkness ancestral symbol is one of them. But what about the other?" Qingtan extended her jade-like wrist from her sleeve. Then, she clenched her fist, before black light slowly gathered in her hand. Finally, they transformed into a completely dark black scythe, that was covered with mysterious symbols. Many onlookers immediately felt a chill rushing towards them when that huge scythe appeared. In fact, it seemed as though that black scythe was the scythe of the Grim Reaper. This is the second sacred object of Darkness Palace, the Darkness Saint Scythe, which is ranked 5th on the ancient divine object ranking. First Elder, what more do you have to say now? Qingtan was holding onto her black scythe with an icy cold expression. Thanks to the darkened sky, she looked just like the god of death. The first elder's elderly face trembled slightly when he saw the large black scythe in Qingtan's hand. Soon after, he turned and looked towards the 2 elders in front. After he did so, the 2 elders slowly opened their shut eyes. Then, they stared indifferently at Qingtan, before a completely emotionless voice resounded across the place. "Little girl, are you sure that the darkness sent scythe in your hands is complete? Little girl, are you sure that the darkness sent scythe in your hands is complete?" An indifferent voice slowly drifted across the sky above the darkness square. However, it caused the hearts of countless individuals to pound violently. Following which, when the crowd turned to look at those 2 elderly figures, there was an additional trace of fear in their eyes. It was likely that they vaguely knew just how frightening the 2 of them were. "2 grand elders, what are the both of you trying to say?" Qingtan's pupils shrunk slightly at this moment. Promptly, while gripping onto the icy cool large black scythe with her delicate little hand, she asked in a cold voice, "Don't tell me that you think that this darkness saint scythe is fake." The 2 grand elders slowly lifted their wrinkle-filled elderly faces. Staring at Qingtan with an indifferent expression, they said nonchalantly, "The darkness saint scythe is indeed real. However, it is incomplete. Therefore, technically speaking, you do not possess the 2 great sacred objects of our darkness palace." "Oh? In that case, I want to know why is it incomplete? When Master handed it over to me, he never once mentioned this." Qingtan laughed coldly. "Forget about you, even your teacher does not know about this." The Grand Elder on the left shook his head and said, "Nonsense." Qingtan's expression darkened. "In terms of status, even your master has to call the both of us martial uncles. Why would it be surprising that he doesn't know certain secrets within Darkness Palace?" The 2 elders ridiculed, the Darkness Saint Scythe was divided into 2 parts ever since the ancient times. The body of the scythe and the spirit of the scythe. Currently, the Darkness Saint Scythe in your hand does not possess a scythe spirit. Therefore, how can it be considered as a complete sacred object? Qingtan's pretty face turned icy cold upon hearing this. Then, she said, "Nonsense. Although the both of you have a high status in my Darkness Palace, the both of you can still be punished for humiliating the sacred objects. Such arrogance. Even if your master is around, he wouldn't dare to do anything to the both of us. Girl, you really lack manners. It's no wonder so many elders are against you." The 2 grand elders' expression sunk before they chuckled. The first owner of the Darkness Saint Scythe was the Darkness Master. However, this divine object took serious damage during the ancient war and the scythe spirit was destroyed. Finally, it landed in the hands of the first palace master of our Darkness Palace. He used his entire life before he finally came up with a way to repair it. Just before he died, he sacrificed himself and once again created a scythe spirit. Only then was the Darkness Saint Scythe completed. However, due to some unexpected events, the scythe spirit disappeared for no reason. Technically speaking, this should be blamed on your master. However, on account of the fact that he has made great contributions to Darkness Palace, the both of us did not speak up. Nevertheless, we cannot allow this mistake to continue. Qingten gripped the Darkness Scent scythe in her hand tightly, while murderous desire was glimmering deep within her eyes. Grand Elders, we have never heard of such a thing. It is hardly convincing. The two black-robed elders replied in a deep voice. They were elders from Darkness Judgment Hall and they were loyal to the head judge. Therefore, they were on opposing standpoints with the Elder Council. It's not difficult to prove that the Darkness Scent scythe is incomplete. However, I wonder if that little lass has the guts to try. One of the Grand Elders said in a faint voice. A cold chill was flowing within Qingtan's eyes. Currently, did she have any other choice? Therefore, she clenched her silver teeth before she said, in that case, please tell me the way. The item that will be used to judge shall be the Ancestral Tablet. Everyone should be aware that the Ancestral Tablet possessed the aura left behind by the first Palace Master. Moreover, the spirit of the Darkness Scent scythe was created from the death of the first Palace Master. You can use the Darkness Scent scythe to cut the Ancestral Tablet. If the Darkness Scent scythe is complete, it will definitely leave a mark on the Ancestral Tablet. Otherwise, it will be completely useless. The Grand Elders gave an indifferent smile before they said, although this act will offend our ancestors, I believe that our ancestors will not falter since this is all for the sake of Darkness Palace. What do you say? Do you dare to try? Countless pairs of eyes shot towards Qingtan, who was above the altar. They were all waiting for her reply. Palace Master, don't fall for their trap. The two black-robed elders quickly said. Qingtan shut her eyes before she gently shook her head and said, right now, do we have any other choice? The two black-robed elders were quiet. After those two Grand Elders showed up, they no longer had much of an advantage within Darkness Palace. Moreover, if they refused, it would only give the Elder Council an excuse. All right, I will do as the Grand Elders say. Qingtan suddenly opened her eyes, before a decisive glint flashed across her eyes. Promptly, with her small hand holding onto the Darkness Scent scythe, her delicate figure moved before she directly appeared in front of the Ancestral Tablet. After which, she let out a delicate roar before her scythe cut through the empty space and hacked against the ancestral stone with lightning-like speed. Clang! A clear metallic sound appeared in the square. After which, countless pairs of eyes turned to stare at the Ancestral Tablet. Following which, their pupils all shrunk. This was because they saw that on the spot where the scythe had landed, there wasn't a mark on the Ancestral Tablet. Uproar. A commotion suddenly erupted in this place. Qingtan leaped backwards. As she stared at the smooth, untouched Ancestral Tablet, a slight paleness appeared on her pretty face. Meanwhile, she was biting her lips while a trace of blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. Little girl, what more do you have to say? The two Grand Elders smiled faintly before they said. Qingtan suppressed the surging emotions in her heart. She rotated her eyes before she calmed down and said, it seems like the Grand Elders are indeed speaking the truth. The Darkness Scent scythe is indeed incomplete. The Grand Elders rejoiced upon hearing this. However, even before they could use this opportunity to speak, Qingtan continued, from today onwards, finding the spirit of the scythe shall be my duty. I'm afraid that Master will be unable to rest in peace if I cannot find it. Humph, this girl really knows how to strike while the iron is hot. The first elder felt secretly outraged as he snorted quietly. He did not expect that Qingtan had managed to turn this incident into an insignificant one in the blink of an eye. Finding the scythe spirit shall also be the duty of our Darkness Palace. However, as of now, you have not obtained the two great sacred objects, and the position of Palace Master cannot be considered as yours. The two Grand Elders had an indifferent expression as they pressed on. Qingtan's eyes gradually turned icy while the ancient symbol between her brows became increasingly clear. In fact, the entire place seemed to have darkened even further as she said, Grand Elders, do you guys know if the Darkness ancestral symbol in my possession is complete? She had begun to reveal the icy cold murderous intent within her words. Evidently, those two Grand Elders have went overboard and their actions have made her furious. When those two Grand Elders felt the ancient ripple reverberating across the sky, their bodies tensed up before a cold expression flashed across their eyes. Then, they said, "Are you planning to rely on the darkness ancestral symbol to suppress the both of us?" The darkness ancestral symbol is the real sacred object of the Palace Master. Grand Elders, I respect the both of you and that is the reason why I have consistently given in. However, if the both of you continue to press on, perhaps I can only invite the darkness ancestral symbol to clean up our palace. Qingtan's icy cold voice was filled with bloodlust as it spread. Currently, she was forced to show her tougher side. The two Grand Elders leaned forward. Then, two frightening auras slowly spread from them and they actually forcefully blocked the fluctuation from the darkness ancestral symbol. The atmosphere of this place quickly became tensed, and it felt as though a fight could break out at any moment. "Ha ha, your master has indeed found quite a capable disciple," one of the Grand Elders suddenly laughed after the atmosphere tensed up. Then, his eyes were gently glimmering as he said, "Actually, it's possible for us to support you to become the next Palace Master. However, we hope that you can agree to one condition." Without a change in her expression, Qingtan's tensed body also relaxed slightly. Those two old fellows, who refused to die, were frighteningly powerful. Therefore, in a real fight, it was likely that she would have difficulties gaining the upper hand even though she possessed the darkness ancestral symbol. Therefore, breaking all ties and fighting with them was clearly the last resort. "Grand Elders, please feel free to speak." A thought flashed across Qingtan's mind before she said in a faint voice, "It's nothing much. I have a martial grandson who is extremely fond of you. If you marry him, the both of us will not object to you becoming the Palace Master." The Grand Elder smiled before he promptly waved his hand. Then, a handsome man dressed in black clothes subsequently walked out from within the Elder Council. With excitement in his eyes, he stared at Qingtan before he sincerely said, "Qingtan, you should know how much I like you. If you marry me, our ancestors will definitely not stop you from becoming the Palace Master." Grand Elder, the first elder was stunned upon seeing this scene, as he hurriedly cried out in a low voice. The two Grand Elders waved their hands. Their eyes were glimmering and no one knew what they were up to. The entire darkness square descended into complete silence, as countless people looked at Qingtan, who was above the altar. After all, the situation had completely exceeded everyone's expectations and no one knew whether Qingtan would agree to the marriage for the sake of the position of Palace Master. Standing above the altar, Qingtan's small hand was tightly holding onto the darkness-sent scythe. Meanwhile, a tiny vein was protruding on her fair and delicate hand, while her delicate figure was trembling. A long while later, she inhaled a deep breath. Following which, fury and bloodlust gushed into her eyes. "Judgment Army, where are you?" "Here." A low and orderly roar suddenly erupted from around the altar. Immediately, tens of thousands of black-clothed figures stood up. "There are traitors forcing the Palace Master to give up her position in order to snatch the position for themselves. They have broken the rules of the palace. How should they be punished? By death." An united cry, which was accompanied by monstrous murderous intent, spread across the entire square. "How dare you!" The two Grand Elders' expressions changed drastically, as they stood up and cried out sternly. "Since the both of you refuse to back down, today, I want to see whether my darkness ancestral symbol can punish the both of you." Qingtan also replied with a stern cry. Following which, she clenched her hand before black light suddenly swept out from within her body. Immediately, the entire place turned pitch dark. "You damned girl. It seems like you truly do not know your own limits. Since the both of us dare to show ourselves, do you really think that your darkness ancestral symbol can suppress us?" The two Grand Elders chuckled. Soon after, the both of them moved before they directly appeared in midair. After which, they formed a strange seal with both their hands, before two rays of light shot directly towards the ancestral tablet. "Us descendants are unfilial. We hope that the ancestor soul can suppress the ancestral symbol." The two Grand Elders cried out in unison. After which, the ancestral tablet began to buzz and shake. Soon after, a black light shot towards the sky. Immediately, Qingtan's beautiful face became slightly pale. This was because she realized that the darkness ancestral symbol within her body was being suppressed. Ancestor soul? This unexpected development caught Qingtan by surprise. Only then did she realize why those fellows only made a move on her after the worship ceremony had begun. It turns out they had a way to use the ancestor soul within the ancestral tablet to suppress the darkness ancestral symbol. Little girl, you want to fight with the both of us with just your puny strength? You truly don't know your limits. The two Grand Elders chuckled immediately after they saw that the darkness ancestral symbol was successfully suppressed. Then, their eyes became cold before they pressed their fingers against the air. Following which, two black rays of light filled with an intense reincarnation ripple cut through the sky and shot towards Qingtan with lightning-like speed. Up against their combined attack, Qingtan immediately felt endangered. Promptly, she clenched her teeth, tightened the grip over her darkness side, before she readied herself to go all out to fight against them. Bang! However, a thunder resounded across the sky just as she was about to act. Everyone was stunned, before they lifted their heads and saw that the sky had unknowingly become covered with dense thunder clouds. After which, a lightning dragon, which was tens of thousands of feet in size, descended from the sky and quickly shattered the two black light rays that contained a reincarnation ripple. Subsequently, the lightning dragon roared before it ruthlessly charged towards the two Grand Elders. The two Grand Elders were startled. Their frightening auras surged as they promptly threw a palm forward, which collided head-on with the lightning dragon. Boom! Lightning sparks rained down from all directions, forcing the two Grand Elders back by more than 100 steps. Their expressions immediately changed as they cried out sternly, "Who is it?" Rumble. Another thunderbolt fell from the sky. Then, it landed in front of Qingtan, whose eyes were now filled with shock. After which, that lightning slowly agglomerated before they finally transformed into a human, in front of countless pairs of shocked eyes. Protect the palace master. The two black-robed elders hurriedly rushed to the front of Qingtan. Meanwhile, their eyes were filled with caution as they stared at that figure. The hundreds of black figures below also moved instantly and surrounded Qingtan in the process. The lightning gradually scattered in front of everyone's eyes before a skinny young figure appeared in front of them. That figure slowly turned around after he showed up. After which, he looked at Qingtan, whose entire body had suddenly stiffened. Finally, he gave her a gentle smile. Qingtan was a little dumbstruck at this moment. In fact, she could not even maintain the grip over her darkness-sent side, as the side shook and fell onto the ground with a loud clang. She was staring in shock at that figure, before tears started to fall from her cold and large eyes. She gently pushed aside her guards and staggered forward. Then, her footsteps suddenly quickened, while the tears in her eyes crazily gushed forward, just like a broken water dam. Finally, she violently leaped onto that skinny figure. While the members of the Judgment Army were all staring at her in bewilderment, she continued to cry. In fact, she hugged that figure and continued to cry wildly. Her cries, which could break one's heart, was emitted from the altar and finally resounded throughout the sky above the square. In front of him, she was no longer the palace master of Darkness Palace. Instead, she was always going to be that little stooge who only knew how to hide behind his back. This was also why she could cry so recklessly in front of him. It was because she knew that he would endure any tantrums that she threw, and shoulder any burdens that she faced. Lindong looked at that girl, who was sobbing uncontrollably, before his nose involuntarily became runny. He extended his hand and tightly hugged that girl's soft body. Just like many years ago, he was still the same young man back at Qingyang Town who would always protect this little girl. Hey! Don't cry. With Big Brother around, you will never get bullied. This video will end here.